Shut up and sit down.
Hey, this is Simon from Nerd Safari, and I am here to talk to you about the 1980s historical epic Excalibur!
Excalibur, sword of power, sword of kings.
So I grew up, you may have noticed, in England, in the countryside, and I was obsessed with Arthurian myths. History is very, very visible in England. Like, you can see back hundreds, if not thousands of years.
A wizard's ancient spell.
Into the eyes of the dragon and in despair!
Now, the director of Excalibur, a man called John Boorman, had the goal of focusing on story, not acting. So in this movie, he cast some unknown actors. This was the debut of actors that people had never even heard of before. People like Gabriel Byrne, Liam Neeson, Ciaran Hinds, and it also had people like Patrick Stewart and Helen Mirren. So an all-star cast before they knew they were an all-star cast.
We're hides evil then.
Where you never expected.
Now, within this movie, things did get a little bit uncomfortable. So there are some things as you watch the movie, you may just want to keep an eye out for. So first of all, Helen Mirren's character gives birth in this movie. Keep an eye out because that may be Helen Mirren's head, but I'm pretty sure the rest of that thing is not Helen Mirren's body. There's also a love scene between Guinevere and Lancelot, and if they're looking a little bit weird and uncomfortable, that's because the lake that they're in was infested with mosquitoes. Ouch. Liam Neeson, it was the first time he'd ever ridden on a horseback, so looking a little bit off-kilter. Now, there's also a point where Uriens knights Arthur, and Arthur becomes a knight. Take a look at that, because maybe he's shaking with emotion, or maybe he's stood in a freezing cold moat in rural Wales, shaking with the cold.
To hear and tell of deeds good and brave.
See if you notice something a little bit weird about the sound in this movie as well, because after recording it, John Boorman thought the stereo balance was a little bit weird, so he changed everything to mono. So if you listen to it in a modern theatre, a little bit weird sounding. Now, everything could be a lot worse. Imagine that you're Pierce Brosnan, you go along to audition for this movie, you don't get the role, you're kind of bummed, driving back home, your car breaks down, you've got no coverage, you can't get it going, and you need to walk home miles in the rain. Pierce Brosnan said it was such a crappy experience that he nearly gave up acting entirely. I'm glad he didn't. If you love armor, all of the armor in this movie is made from aluminium, I still say it the English way, by an actual blacksmith. The blacksmith is in the movie as the blacksmith who looks at King Arthur as he runs past and considers snatching a sword and stealing it.
Behold the sword of power, Excalibur.
That was the actual blacksmith who made all of the armor in the movie. Now, there's a trial by combat scene in this movie, and you may think it looks a little weird. That's because the movie was originally supposed to be a Lord of the Rings movie. They couldn't get the rights to Lord of the Rings, and therefore they built the set to Rivendell and reused it in the trial by combat scene. So it looks very Lord of the Rings, but it's not.
The future has taken root in the present. It is done.
Now, I would recommend pour yourself a horn of ale or whatever suits you. Sit down and enjoy this movie for what it is. A really deep fantasy history story movie with a ton of awesome acting from awesome actors. This was Simon from Nerd Safari. Peace out, guys.
Shut up and sit down.